Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Beth Hawley with the Arizona Association of Realtors. Joining us today is Theresa Barnabie, inspirational educator. Theresa has over 35 years in the business world, the first half being dedicated to the United Parcel Service and the back half devoted to real estate. Theresa brings a wealth of knowledge, experience, and practical advice to every presentation, as she has mastered business management, real estate investing, realtor sales, and management of a highly profitable 150-agent office. Her passion for real estate has afforded her the opportunity to be a presenter on behalf of NRA and for associations and brokers throughout the country, including 4 years as a Keller Williams Bold Coach. Today's presentation will be about 35 to 45 minutes long. If you have any questions during the webinar, please write them in the question box and we will try to get them answered. If you'd like to change the size of the webcam video, simply click on the line separating the webcam and the PowerPoint presentation and drag. As always, today's webinar will be recorded and available next week. So let's get started.
I'm great, thank you, and excited to be here.
You should have control.
And as long as you can see my screen, then yes, I do. So good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I am excited to be able to do this on behalf of AAR, talking about what does it mean to help instructors go from good to great. And you know, when we were talking about this webinar, the idea was, what is your role as monitors, as auditors, as evaluators? What is your role in helping instructors go from good to great? And as I was pondering the whole idea, it really came to me that it really starts with you. In other words, if you're the one that's evaluating, if you're the one that's accepting, if you're the one that's bringing instructors on board, if you're the ones that are monitoring the classes to make sure that those classes are everything that we expect in the industry, no matter where we are, whatever role we play in that industry, then it really does start with you. And so I want to just ask you a simple question, and that is, are you ready? Are you ready to take that responsibility on, that you play a really big role in raising the professionalism of our industry one instructor at a time? And when we raise the level of professionalism with our instructors one student at a time, then we're going to change the professionalism in the eyes of the consumer towards real estate agents. And in that alone, we take on a really big role, because watch the rollover effect. We select the right instructors, we train them, we monitor them, we audit them, we give them valuable feedback. When we help them become better professionals, they appear that way in front of every agent. When we're teaching information that is of value to them, and we raise the level of professionalism of every single student in those classrooms, they then go out into the world and they appear, practice, become more professional. Then in the consumer's eyes, we can literally raise their opinion of our industry one client at a time. And so there's this huge rollover effect that sometimes we think we're isolated in a classroom, and we're really not. And so all I want you to do right now in the chat is just answer yes or no. Are you ready to take on a role that by the end of this webinar, it may appear to be bigger than you ever thought that it would be? Yes or no? Just go ahead and start jotting your answers in the chat box, and I will be watching. That means you have to get off your email and get back into the webinar. Come on. Nobody's ready. There we go. Anybody? Okay, so let's talk about how big it really is. So these are the neighborhoods that we affect. And in getting an idea or a sense of how big our role is in the education field, every single one of these houses on this picture is affected by us. So I like to take it to the global aspect and say, all right, so somebody decides to buy a house. What's the rollover effect in the neighborhood? What's the rollover effect in the community? What's the rollover effect in the city? Therefore, what's the rollover effect in the county? What's the rollover effect in the state? So as an instructor for most of my life, I got to tell you, I always look to the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that rollover effect. So I go back to when the market, they did the debacle, whoever did it. And I sit and I say, when a lot of houses went into foreclosure, a lot of property taxes weren't being paid. When the property taxes don't get paid, the roads start to get worse. I don't know, maybe everywhere around the state we love our road conditions, but I think that's one of the biggest complaints that people have. It's about how the roads are. That starts with real estate. It starts with property taxes. When a person buys a house and they want to do home improvements, they affect the retail industry in terms of the Home Depots and the Lowe's and the Ace Hardwares. And when they buy a home, they furnish it, and that affects retail. And I start looking at that in a bigger sense, and I'm like, oh my gosh, people, whether they're buying a house or renting a house, it now means food on the table, and that affects the grocery stores. And it kind of goes on and on and on about the rollover effect of homeowners. So somebody buys a house, now the utility companies are working. And TVs are being bought and cables being paid for. And that is the crux of what we do. And so many times we think we're just in this little classroom. And guys, we're not. We're all over this state. And we're in neighborhoods just like the one that you see on the screen. And those cars that are on the road are purchased because people can. And I just want to kind of help you get the bigger picture. And if you see that, just say yes. Because that's the critical role that we play when we start to look at it in a bigger sense of what is my impact in what I wake up and do every single morning? What impact do I have on this industry? And you can take it out as far as you need to take it out so that you start understanding how big your role is in real estate education. So when we talk about education, we look at it from the standpoint of, I have these things I have to comply with. Whether we're complying with the ADRE standards or whether you're using the GATE principles or whatever audit forms that you are using at any given time, that's one aspect. And today my goal is to help you look at the criteria in a different way. And if we can just see it in a little different way, we can have a bigger impact. And so I was processing, like, what is it that we could talk about that really could show people how to go from good to great? And what standards do we put in place over and above what's on the forms? Like when I answer a question on the form, what am I really answering? What are they really asking for here? And this is where I'm going to challenge you moving forward in understanding that there's more behind the question and there's even more behind the answer that you put on the forms. And so I started thinking, like, if I could find just a few key points that we could help instructors improve on, would they take us from good to great? And I came up with 5 traits of a great instructor. And I'd like to take you through those step by step. So the first trait is really to look at what is it that they know. And are they in the know? That's what I really want to know. Are they in the know? So as you're sitting in the classroom, My goodness gracious, how many of you have sat in a class and you just keep hearing the same things over and over again? And do you ever sit there and say, my gosh, do these people upgrade their classes at all? Are we teaching, stuff from 10 years ago that don't necessarily apply today? And so my opinion of people being in the know literally is, are they current? Are they teaching the stuff that's happening today, and not from just our perspective or the agent perspective, but what about the consumer perspective? Like, does the class that you're auditing or monitoring, does that class teach people what they need to know to meet the consumer where the consumer is today? In other words, let me give you an example. The consumer today, we know about a little over 50% of them are finding their house on the internet. The house that they're going to buy, they find it on the internet. Are we teaching agents that? Because we have a 50% consumer population that we have to reach by what we teach. And the only way we're going to reach where the consumer is if we teach the agent where the consumer is. And then teach things that are applicable to where the consumer is. So let's take that as an example. 50% are finding the house that they want to purchase and that they do purchase online. What does that mean? That means that we have to teach agents how to market listings online better. Then we have to sit and say, well, what does the consumer want when they're online? Well, we know they want multiple photos. We know they want interactive maps. We know that they want detailed property information. We know that they want a virtual tour. Okay, so am I giving the agent, as an instructor, the tools to create that listings appearance, presence on the internet? That's some of the things that we have to be teaching today. Then, are we teaching them what they do after they find the house on the internet? So let's say they find the house that they think they want to buy. What is the first thing that a consumer does? Consumer does not get in their car and drive the neighborhood. The consumer looks online for all of that information. They're looking for the pictures. They're looking for the videos. They're looking for the interactive maps. Then they get in the car and drive around, way before they've even called us. So how do we teach agents today how to interact with that kind of consumer? And that's what I mean by in the know. Are they teaching consumer-based material? Even fair housing. What does fair housing look like today? I know ADRE says that we have to do the historical timeline. I get that. But what does fair housing mean today? It means that there are more discrimination claims filed from the disabled group than any other group. So now our fair housing classes, in addition to meeting the ADRE requirements, should be, if disability is the number one discriminated class, then how do we teach our agents not to discriminate, to be so aware of what it means to be servicing the disabled client? Those are the kinds of things I'm talking about. Are they in the know? Are they up to the minute? Are they cutting edge with the material that we're presenting? And that means that every class should be updated so that it is the most relevant information that they can be teaching, which takes us to step number 2. Okay, let me back up. So what I did is I went through the audit forms and the standards forms, and I said, okay, to help instructors be in the know, what items on my forms should I use to elevate their step number 1 towards greatness? Are you in the know? And so off of your forms, here are some of the lines that I literally just took off. The standards, the audit forms. And number 1 is to understand the concept of adult learning and learning styles. So in order to get people to understand what they're teaching, they got to know who the consumer is. Again, being in the know. So I get that there are learning styles and I get that there are adult learning techniques. Here's what I would say. Who's in the classroom? Do I understand the concept of the adults that are in the classroom and how they learn? Millennials learn differently than baby boomers. So am I teaching in a manner that touches baby boomers, millennials, and everybody in between? So take that one statement that you see on your forms, and then I would just broaden that. I would just bring that out to a bigger scope when you're actually doing the critiques and the mentoring and the selection. Next one, do they demonstrate subject matter expertise, and are they current? And I understand that the way that this question is written is this: do I respect the current experience of the agents that are in the room? And I also want to be responsible as an instructor to take them to the next level experience of building my business around who that consumer is today and what do they want. The next one, was the instructor knowledgeable in the subject matter? And it's not just, do I have my dates down on fair housing, but am I knowledgeable right now in what's going on in the world today when it comes to fair housing? Are we using incidences of discrimination that it's actually happening today? That, I would ask you when you look at that question on your forms to sit and say, but did they bring it to today, or are we still talking about 1968? Well, the real question is, what does 1968 have to do with today? Like in 2018, do we know that we're having an anniversary year for the Fair Housing Act? Man, when we're teaching our fair housing classes or when we're auditing the fair housing classes, are they noting that? Are they noting that in 2018 we're in an anniversary year? And what has that anniversary caused to happen in the real estate industry? Because it definitely has affected us. So those kinds of things, in terms of being so knowledgeable, they're ahead of the curve. They should be thinking in 2017 what's happening in 2018 and be ready for that. That's raising the level from good to great. And that's the whole purpose of us having this class, is how do we get from good to great? How do we facilitate our instructors going from good to great? And the next thing is to demonstrate in-depth knowledge of the subject. That whole example I gave you, that over 50% of the consumers are finding their house online, and then taking it to the next level and saying, okay, what do they want to see when they go online? And then how is the agent supposed to meet them? So in other words, how do I teach them how to create the videos that are exciting that the buyers who are buying the houses online want to see? What do my multiple photos look like? And stop taking pictures of toilets. And right? So it's that kind of stuff. If we could just get our agents to tap into that, there's no doubt in my mind they would be stellar. And I know that some of you right now are sitting and saying, Theresa, I know that instructor. I know the ones who do that. And I bet you they set the bar for the next class that you're auditing, or the next instructor that you're interviewing, or the next class that you're monitoring. Because when the bar is raised, we expect everybody to meet that. And it's not a personal preference. It's really instructor skill set, which we'll get to in a little bit. But these are the things that help them master their skills. So hopefully this will also give you the opportunity to step back and say, man, I remember on that webinar, they said this. Is that instructor doing that? Whether I love that instructor, whether they're my favorite best bud that I love to have lunch with or not, are they teaching the material the way the material needs to be taught today? Are they handling the real estate matters the way they need to be handled today? And so that takes us to number 2. And step number 2 is the class relevant? Is the instructor teaching relevant information? And that is, quite simply put this way, guys, it is not just how the material is presented. It's does the material change, impact, improve the way agents can leave that classroom and go out and be more successful? Is it information that will literally connect the dots for them in the classroom so they can put it into effect out in the classroom with today's consumer in today's marketplace? Is it relevant? And that, I have to tell you, is probably the one thing as an instructor that I look for on evaluation forms. When a student puts on the evaluation form that they have gotten valuable tools, new information that will change the way they do business or improve the way they do business, then daggone it, I know that class was successful, because that to me is all that matters. And so the points that are on your forms that will help us expand the scope of how we evaluate relevancy is when we look at the 2 points, and they both say relevant. Deliver relevant, accurate, current information that is pertinent to today's information. Kind of sums up everything that I was talking about when I was referencing in the know. And if they're in the know and they're teaching in the know, then their class should be relevant, as long as they have the opportunity to connect the dots. So on your forms where it says provide relevant examples of how the information can be applied to the student's practice, are the instructors connecting the dots? In other words, it's not just enough to sit and say, hey guys, 2018 is an anniversary year for the Fair Housing Act. It now is a statement, and how is that brought home? So for 90 years, we've been asked to do business differently. How have you been doing business differently over the course of the years that you've been in the industry? Because there was a time where race was the #1 class with discrimination claims. Now we've switched from race to disability. Can that change in the environment today? When we look at, and I'm not having a political conversation here, but when we look at the political atmosphere, will religion or creed be affected in 2019? So that's what I mean by connecting the dots, bringing it home every single time, bring it home. And in connecting the dots, they don't have to think about how they're going to make things happen differently outside of the classroom. They're teaching them in the classroom how to make things differently outside the classroom. So step number 3 really is, what is their belief? What is their belief in what they're teaching? And I got to tell you that the only way I can best explain this is to give you an example. My school course creators, about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, we had 155 classes approved by the Arizona Department of Real Estate. And every time a class comes up for renewal, I sit with Chris, who basically runs Course Creators. I sit with Chris and I say, do I still believe in this class, that it will make a difference in the lives of every student or the majority of the students in that classroom? And if I don't believe in what I'm teaching anymore, we don't renew the class. Because as an instructor, I've got to be able to stand up there and believe in what I'm teaching, that it will absolutely positively make a difference. And you can sense that from being a monitor and auditor when you're interviewing people, whether they should be approved as instructors or not. You can tell when they believe what they're teaching. Like, I totally believe that if right now, if we just took these 3, if instructors literally would just be in the know, do the research, have consumer focus, learner based, if I know if they would start teaching from in the know, they're on their step ladder up to great. If it's relevant information and those students walk out of there better for having been in the class, then I know that they're 2 steps closer to being great. And if I can sense that that instructor absolutely positively believes in what they're teaching, that it will make a difference, then I know they're halfway to great. There's no doubt in my mind. I believe in the steps that we're covering today. And I hope that you can sense that in my voice. I hope that you can sense that in the excitement. I hope that you can sense that in my conviction. And that's what I would be asking you to look for when you're taking a look at the forms when it comes to belief. So some areas that you can expound on. Number one, do they reflect a good appearance and bearing? Look, I get dressing for success, and I understand being the professional in the room, and that when we walk in our suits and in our professional attire, we are raising the standard in the industry. I get that. The bearing, my energy when I walk into that room, if I have that energy of belief, if I have that confidence, if I have that conviction that every single person in this room has got to hear what this class is teaching, you can feel that. You can sense that. And to me, if I from today forward, I would hope that when you look at that question on the form, and when you look at that standard, and you say, oh man, it's not just did they polish their shoes. It really is, did they walk in this room with a sense of confidence and belief in what they're teaching? And have they conveyed that belief to the agents, to the students in that room, that they can go out and actually do what we're teaching? So it's a confidence builder that starts with the instructor and rolls over to the student. Did they use good voice control? Look, if they believe what they're teaching, you're going to hear it in their voice. The monotone instructors versus the excited instructors. And I know right now in your mind, you're probably thinking about the one who keeps you awake with just their voice control. I know you're thinking about the ones that put you to sleep because they're so monotone that 50 minutes feels like an hour and a half. All right. So follow the models of the people that you already admire as great instructors, and then use that model to raise the bar for the next one. I know this one kind of might sound like, well, good eye contact with students. What's that have to do with anything? Guys, when you look somebody straight in the eye, it means that you're convicted in what you're saying. And if somebody, look, as instructors, we used to be taught, don't look at anybody because it'll distract you. So we were literally taught as professional speakers to look at their forehead and their hairline. So we were taught to look up here because from the audience, it looks like we're looking at their eye. But the reality of it is we're looking over their heads, and we're actually looking over their heads to the back of the room. And that's how when we don't see anything specifically like somebody's expressions, that we don't get thrown off track. Now, in the beginning of my career, I used to believe that. Now, I don't believe that at all. Now, my job is to believe in what I'm teaching, believe in my ability to teach the material, believe in my ability to change how they do business when they walk out of that classroom. I want to look them straight in the eye. And I want to see if they're getting it. A lot of us gauge our success as instructors. I love watching when the lights went on. I mean, I don't know how many times you hear instructors say that. Man, I love that moment when I can just see it in their eyes that they get what we're talking about. Well, I got to be looking in their eyes in order to make that happen. And then when they're making eye contact, then they know their material. They're not looking down at what they need to read to the students. So those qualities is what I would ask you to look at differently when you start looking at the standards that we set in auditing, selecting, and monitoring classes. Did they demonstrate that he or she was prepared? Look, it's practice. It's mastery of the material. And here's what I will tell you. When we go back to becoming in the know and doing the research that needs to be done to know where the consumer is today, to make where the consumer is today relevant in what I'm teaching so that the agents meet the consumers where they are. When I'm doing all that research, I'm prepared. I got the facts. I got the information. And it's either going to be embedded in my head, or it's going to be written somewhere in the outline, or it's going to be written somewhere in the PowerPoint. I had a business partner, and sometimes when he would write classes and I would deliver them, I never felt as prepared when I was teaching somebody else's material. So for those of you that are working with the GRI folks, they're teaching somebody else's material. but they still have to get in the know as to why that topic was put in that class at that time and research it. And then they'll show up more prepared no matter whose class they're teaching, whether they wrote it and it's now committed to memory, or whether they're teaching somebody else's material and they're so well prepared that it appears as if it's their material. Just food for thought. Because when you evaluate your next instructor, I just want you to think differently. Look at the tools that you've already been using. Look at how you can use those differently now and elevate from good to great based on your comments. So the next step, number 4, is passion. Look, if I know that I'm teaching consumer-based information that's going to change the way agents deal with the consumer, when I make it relevant, when I believe in what I'm teaching, the passion just naturally comes. And I take a lot of agents through an exercise of, instructors through an exercise of, why do you teach? And I would ask you the same question. Why have you raised your hand and said, I want to be a part of making instructors good to great? Why? What fuels that in you? What sparks that passion that makes you want to get on a webinar at 9 o'clock on Monday morning to sit and say, how can I be better to make everybody else better? So when I ask instructors, why do you teach? Boy, you get down to the heart of the matter. And when somebody really teaches from the heart pretty consistently, then the passion naturally is obvious, evident. So I have a passion, and I turned that passion into a mission statement. So I would even suggest that in the interview process for instructors, I would ask them, why do you teach? Because I have a mission statement in my company that says, I only teach those courses in a manner that students can get the information. Because when they get the information, they'll use the information. And when they use the information, they will be more successful because of it. That is my company mission. And that's why when I didn't believe that a class could help them get it, use it, become more successful, we didn't renew it with ADRE. And if I didn't believe in it, I can't be passionate about it. So hopefully we have instructors that are out there teaching what they're passionate about. And again, I know you know those people. So use those people as the bar. Because passion can be smelled. Passion can be felt. The agents know. I was once told one time that the instructor said, hey, it's okay if you put your head down during class. And I was floored that one of my students came and told me that another instructor said that. So right there, guys, what's the passion level? On a scale of 1 to 5, go ahead and get that in your head. But now take that person that comes in and they're so excited to teach, that person that you know, what would you rate them on a scale of 1 to 5? And I bet you they would be a 5 on the passion level. So certain things on your form that I would ask you to look at differently when it comes to evaluating passion. Is their motivation learner-based? In other words, is it more about the student than it is about their presentation? Is it learner-based? Are they bringing relevant information? Next, do they show enthusiasm for the subject? That passion and belief put together will bring them enthusiastically to the classroom. There's a joke amongst a couple of instructors that, look, we can go into a classroom almost feeling ill, sick, have the flu, hurt, injured a knee, whatever, but the minute we turn on to get the message across for whatever we're teaching, that enthusiasm for what we're teaching, we don't even know we're sick anymore. We don't even know that we're in pain anymore. It's like we rise above, and that enthusiasm is really what causes us to rise above anything that's going on in our physical body. And, teaching for 3 hours, standing up the entire time, walking around the room, doing the skill set stuff that we know we need to do in the classroom, moving tables and chairs around. If I'm not enthusiastic, believe me, I don't have the energy to move tables and chairs around to make that an ideal room setup. So just look at passion and enthusiasm for the subject just a little bit differently. And then we'll be rating our instructors differently as well. Next one, what are the strengths and things you like about this instructor? Look, I don't know that we've rated instructors on passion before. I know we rate them on all these other criteria that we're going to talk about when we get to the skill set. But what if one of their strengths was their passion and believability and their relevancy, and that they are cutting edge and current? Those strengths. So wouldn't it be cool if instructors all of a sudden started seeing on their evaluation forms, loved your passion and enthusiasm for what you taught? And maybe you're already doing that. And if you are, please keep doing that. And for those instructors that aren't doing that, when it says what can they improve on, just make a note. Improve on your passion and enthusiasm for the subject. It'll come across in your voice control, in your mannerisms, in your body language. I was teaching an IDW a couple of months ago for AAR in Phoenix. And one of the things we talked about in that was communication. And that the words that we say are only 7% in the big scheme of communication. 93% is voice, is body language, tonality, speed. It's how we say what we're saying that makes the difference. So if they're using, 93% of their communication skills in conjunction with what they have to say to deliver the material, the words that they're going to use, then they're 100% on the communication scale. And when you're 100% on the communication scale and your voice is into it, your body's into it, and your speed is into it, and sometimes you'll slow down, sometimes you'll get quiet when you have a point to make, all of that is a demonstration of passion. And we've looked at it only as a skill set, communication skill. No, communication skill is fueled by passion. So what areas where this instructor can improve? I just pretty much covered that in terms of when we start asking them to show more passion and enthusiasm, maybe they'll start showing more passion and enthusiasm. It's amazing. I was taught one time, a long time ago, when I was a branch manager, they said, reward the behavior that you want. And if you want more passion in the classroom, where people write on their evaluations, this class went by so fast. Here's my favorite evaluation point. When they say what they liked least was the breaks, that they had to go on breaks. What they liked least is that the class ended. Oh my gosh, from an instructor standpoint, I know I did my job. I know I presented the information in a manner in which time flew by to the point where they didn't know the class was over, they didn't want the class to end, and don't even take 10 minutes for a break. So if it's their strength, let them know that. Reward the behavior that you want. If it's a strength that you want to see in your instructors, then put that in the areas that could use improvement. And so that takes us to step number 5. And step number 5 is skill set, the skills that they bring to the table. Now, look, I just want to say, there's 2 slides now of all the things that are on our forms that y'all use. We oftentimes just rate on skill set. And what I'm asking you to do is to recognize that skills is number 5. Skills is the ability to pull steps 1, 2, 3, 4 together and deliver it in a manner that needs to be congruent. All 5 steps need to be congruent. And our skill set is the last. It's not the first. It's the last. Because it's the ability to bring it home, to bring it live in the classroom. And so here are some of the things that you guys evaluate based on your standards and audit forms Do they apply the appropriate teaching methods to promote transfer of knowledge? We're going to talk about a couple of different ones as we go through these, but teaching today, look, I started teaching, don't laugh, but I started teaching with an overhead projector. For those of you that don't know, what we used to do is we used to type and print out on this clear plastic what we wanted to show up on the screen. And we put it on a projector that had a light bulb and a mirror that projected it. And we used to carry all, like sometimes a class would be like 50 of these transparents. We used to call them transparencies. If I used that teaching method today, I would be laughed out of the classroom. So I know that is like such a ridiculous example, but I'm just saying, are we keeping up with the trends? That's all. Are we doing webinars? Are we doing videos inside the classroom? You know, are we doing interactive learning techniques? Those new teaching methods that we have to be also in the know about, by the way. Classroom management strategies. You know, what do we do with the students, the millennials, who were born with these devices in their hand? What do we do with them? You know, when we think they're taking notes on their tablet, but we find out they're on their email. That's dealing with today's issues. How do we deal with those? Effective classroom management strategies. Are they not calling anybody out? Are you guys taking the ball by the horns? And the bull by the horns, and I'm sure you are. When you see somebody reading their messages in class, like just a little tap on the shoulder, kind of lets them know you're there. I just go up and stand next to them. And that sometimes just does the trick. All right. Ensure the classroom environment is conducive to learning. I think you guys got that down. It's very clear on your forms that we just move tables and chairs. We affect lighting so that that it's the best learning environment, and that we create a safe harbor for our students. We don't berate anybody. We don't call anybody out. We don't point out. We don't talk down. We create a great environment to learning. Did they follow the outline? Because that's what we're responsible for. We have X amount of information to cover in X amount of time. That's what we committed to ADRE. Let's make it happen. Continuing on, what presentation techniques were used? Look, active learning techniques are not the easiest techniques to teach, but they are the most effective in student retention. And so when our instructors are getting in the know, they should be learning what are the newest presentation techniques so that students actually get what they're talking about. Did they encourage student participation? You don't have to encourage it when you set up the class for interactive learning, because they're going to participate when you do what we call pair and share. Two people go ahead and get together and let's talk about what 90 years of fair housing means. Okay, good. Did the instructor repeat the student questions so that everybody can hear it? Hey guys, I just saw that I ordered it actually. There's this ball that has a microphone in it. And instead of running around the room with mics, all we have to do is toss the ball and they hold the ball and it's a microphone. Then do I have to repeat student questions? Am I using state-of-the-art technology to change how students feel in my classroom? Am I using presentation techniques new and updated? I can't wait for my first class when I get to use this microphone. I just envision the students like having fun tossing the ball. Oh, I just can't wait. So when I use new presentation techniques, it might eliminate the need to repeat the students' questions if I have a mic. If I don't have this ball that I'm going to be tossing around, am I getting to the student with a microphone? So I don't have to repeat it. If the other students can't hear it, I need to repeat it. So there are ways that we can improve even the skill standards that we're talking about. So when I look at putting all 5 of these together, I have a simple question for you. If we talk about evaluating our instructors based on the 5 steps to go from good to great, I want to ask you something. Can you see how relevant these 5 steps are to you and how you can get better, how you can be in the know about the cue ball, that you can be in the know about what's relevant in today's real estate industry? Do you believe that you being in that classroom, evaluating that instructor, is going to make that instructor better because you're in the room? And when you have that belief, you're going to show up with an amount of passion that you will evaluate them honestly, objectively. It's not about evaluating the person I like the best with the best evaluations. It's about being fair. It's about being honest. It's about changing the real estate industry from the classroom out to the streets. And that's what we get to do. And when we do all that, it goes without saying that we will naturally improve our skill set. And so I'd like to end with this. And if anybody has any questions, and I haven't seen any come up, but if anybody has any questions, please, by all means, write them in the chat box. Beth is monitoring that. Beth, do we have any questions that I might be missing?
We don't have any questions, but a couple of clarification points, if you don't mind.
Please.
So talk to us about how important practical, relevant experience in the topic is.
In terms of the instructor having the experience?
Yes.
So do I have to go out, did I have to go out and be a real estate agent to understand what it means to be a real estate agent? If you're asking that question, I have to tell you that if you really want to understand your audience, I do believe there is a certain amount of walk in their shoes philosophy that I carry. In other words, in order for me to believe what I'm teaching, I either have to believe it from a theory position or I have to believe it from an experiential position. Now, if you can watch an instructor truly believe what they're teaching with passion from a theory perspective, then it might work. But I think you'll know those instructors who teach from theory versus who teach from experience. And to be able to stand in front of a room and say, I know what it's like to list a property. I know what it's like to not have anything to say to a seller, and therefore I don't call them this week, and then I don't call them next week, and then I'm so embarrassed I don't even want to call them, and therefore I don't. I can say that from my heart, not from theory. So I think if someone's going to teach from theory, I think as auditors and monitors and part of the selection criteria, I would weigh so heavily on these 5 steps, definitely belief and passion, if they're not coming from the experience side of things. I hope that answers the question and clarifies it.
Yes, thank you. And I wanted to also clarify that AAR's focus for instructors has been for the instructor to have the practical experience so that they can teach on a deeper level. But thank you for the clarification on that. Also, say an instructor arrives late and they're flustered, and that's not a good impression, correct?
When an instructor runs late and they're flustered?
Right, as a general rule.
Here's what I can say about that. It takes a while to get in the zone. And so when you're watching a class, guys, just pay attention to that, because you'll see how some people can get in the zone faster, and you'll see how some instructors take longer to get in the zone. If I'm coming in late and I'm flustered, I promise it will take longer to get in the zone. So to be early, to be prepared, to be grounded, to have all your equipment set up, tested exactly the way you need to, you can click into the zone a whole lot faster. Now, when we only have 50 minutes an hour, we got to get in that zone fast. We don't have time to waste. Most instructors will probably write about 3.5 to 4 hours of information for a 3-hour class. So we don't have time to waste. and I don't have the right to gear up in front of my students. I better be geared up before I get in front of those students. That's when I show up the best. And that's what my students deserve. Me showing up the best that I can show up every time. And so therefore, I would evaluate very heavily on somebody who comes in late and isn't ready to launch straight up on the hour, straight up. I know I'm pretty adamant about that, but yeah. And I know life goes on. I know life goes on. I know traffic. I get that. We have to prepare accordingly for that. So, yeah.
Speaking about preparing, say through practical practice and research, you find out that things have changed. Can you edit your class? Yes.
So I can only speak from experience. Before I teach a class, I will spend hours updating every slide. If it needs updated, I'll update. I'll research and make sure that what I'm teaching right now is still the most relevant information I can teach. And so what ADRE says is, as long as you're still teaching conceptually the item in the outline, it doesn't have to be the same item all the time. In other words, like if I'm teaching how to market your listing. You know, in the day it was flyers in the flyer box. I don't mean flower, I mean flyer. But today it's videos and QR codes on the sign. So I have the right, per ADRE guidelines, I still have to talk about marketing the listing. But instead of talking about flyers, I can change it up and talk about videos and QR codes without having to revamp the entire outline. Now, if it changes up a lot, if the class changes up a lot, then I would submit a new outline upon renewal for sure. Yeah, we gotta play by the rules.
Thank you. Can you give us best practices for how to not just push through a class, to get to the end? To exhibit to your students that you want to be there, you want to be teaching.
Don't teach anything that you don't believe in and that your passion cannot get stirred over. Now, I know that's because then some people would be like, well, then I'm never teaching legal issues. No, figure out how you can make legal issues exciting. Get that creative juice kicked in. And how do you get excited other than the material that you're teaching? I got to go back to my mission statement. Fuels me every time I walk in that class. And I have a personal mission. So I have a mission statement for my company, but I have a personal mission. And that is to raise the level of professionalism in our industry one agent at a time. And when I walk into that classroom, I have those two things in mind. I'm going to teach people how to get it, use it, become more successful because of it. Because when they're more successful, it literally raises the professionalism of the industry. So that's why I said, like in the interview process, if you're determining to bring an instructor on or not, ask them what their mission statement is. Ask them why they teach. And if they don't have one and you're working with an instructor to take them from good to great, have them get one. Have them call me. I'll get them one. We'll work through what is most exciting to them. I coach for a living. I'll be more than glad to coach anybody through becoming a better instructor. And so if anybody on this call has any questions, by all means, reach out for me, email me, call me, and just say, could you just help me with this? I'd be more than glad to spend some time with you. Because I'm passionate about raising the level of professionalism in this industry one student at a time. So what's behind it, Beth? I think we have to get what is behind every instructor in that psyche, in their heart, in their gut. What is behind them that propels them to get in front of that classroom and teach?
So from your experience, what are the signs that auditors can look for that will help them believe the instructor is there because they want to help the students be better?
I think it's these 5. I think it's definitely the first 4. You know, if you're monitoring a class and this gal has taught the same thing every single time with no updates. Look, we live in a very vibrant world and we work in an extremely volatile market. Hey, what I taught last month may not be the same thing today. So if I'm not relevant, I'm probably bored with teaching or too busy to do my job 100% because I'm too busy to do the research to update the class. And I think that someone's demeanor, I mean, you know when you're talking to somebody if they're bored, don't you? I mean, you can tell when somebody's paying attention to you when you're talking. When the students are not paying attention, when the students are restless, when the students are shuffling papers, they are not engaged. And your students, watch the students in the room as much as you watch the instructor, because the students will give you the signs as to whether or not they're engaged with whatever the instructor has to say. Like I'll go to Chris. Chris monitors all my classes, and I'll ask her. You know, that's one of our marks. She'll be like, Theresa, nobody was on their computer, nobody was on their phone, everybody was locked on. Watch your students. They'll show you what you should be evaluating the instructor on. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. That is it for our questions today. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to take us back to where we started, and that it's not just the instructor, not just the students, but it's you. It's you agreeing to go from good to great with what you do. And I hope that today we've given you enough information to help you improve on how you show up in the classroom, and more importantly, how you help those instructors change the lives of the students that are in that room. That's why we should be doing what we're doing. So,
well, thank you. Thank you so much, Theresa, for this great instruction. We at the GRI program are looking for great instructors, not just good instructors. So I really feel like you have given them some great tools to become those great instructors. Awesome. Thank you. And thank you. Thank you to our audience. And this will be available for viewing sometime next week. And have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.